Greetings from Tokyo, my friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope all of you are doing very well. Continuing with my discussion of the works of television directed by Dario Argento, let me now talk to you about a very, very interesting work, which is called Do You Like Hitchcock? This is a television film that was broadcast on Italian television, but it was given DVD releases abroad, and this is the Anchor Bay DVD. And so it is a feature-length film here, and according to the back here, let me see, it is 93 minutes. So 93 minutes is this particular DVD. It's a great film. And it's one that has a lot of suspense and twists and thrills. And there are direct links to Alfred Hitchcock, which is wonderful because we have seen in the past Argento's films seemingly calling back or recalling elements of past films and the glory of Alfred Hitchcock's suspense cinema canon. So to have a film like this, which is a real loving homage to the works and aspects of Alfred Hitchcock's films, I think is really lovely. So this is a film that I'm actually quite fond of. Before I go further, of course, I have to say, if you have not seen the film, please stop the video and try to find this and try to watch it. And take a look and see what you think of the film, and I'd love to hear your thoughts when you watch it. So please, after you see the film, come back to this video and we can discuss further this very interesting television work, Do You Like Hitchcock? So as I said, I'm very fond of this film. I think it has a lot of neat elements that are great in terms of presenting this work, which is another whodunit thriller giallo film. And it has a nice mystery element to it, which involves voyeurism and involves, in particular, callbacks to the Hitchcock films Strangers on a Train and also Rear Window. But there are also other visual elements that recall other Hitchcock films like Vertigo and Dial M for Murder. I would say even North by Northwest is in there. I'd say Frenzy is in there as well. There is also, I would say, a callback to The Trouble with Harry even, and also Rope. But there, mainly I would say Strangers on a Train and Rear Window, and to a lesser extent Vertigo. But with that in mind, there are also great callbacks to Argento's giallo past. And I would say in particular, there seems to be a lot of callbacks to Deep Red. There is a murder scene that occurs early on here, the murder of the mother in her apartment. And it's done in a way that really reminds me a lot of the first murder scene in Deep Red, Helga Ullman's murder scene, if you recall. And here in Do You Like Hitchcock, I love the close-ups of the feet of the killer as the killer's walking towards or down the hallway, and that reminds me of remember there's a shot in Deep Red when the killer breaks into the room and he shuts the door, and then the killer's feet are seen in close-up. It's almost the exact same shot, but here it's different because here it's strongly backlit, so there's a huge sort of silhouette effect, and it's really eerie like that. I love how the film here seems to be recalling past Argento work, but then twisting it. In this sense, Argento is putting the light in back, so it's really creating the shadow effect, this black and white silhouette shadow effect, which is a wonderful compare and contrast moment with Deep Red. There's also that great moment during that same murder where the victim bends down for a moment, and we see the gloved hand holding the whatever it is, the bar or something that is then used to bludgeon the woman to death on the back of her head. And I love that peeling away element. You know, it reminds me a lot of certain similar shots that we saw of something suddenly appearing in the frame. We saw that very famously in Tenebrae, if you recall. And it also occurs, I think, to a slightly lesser effect, but still very effectively, in the film Sleepless. There's also a great... so there is that moment, and also the violence is very, very graphic. I think I'm not sure what the levels of acceptable violence were at the time when this was broadcast, say, on Italian television. But there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of close-ups of heads being smashed and all that. There's sex and nudity. So it's pretty loaded in terms of intense scenes, or scenes that perhaps are not appropriate for a younger audience. So in that sense, it's very surprising. It doesn't feel like a television movie in that sense, or at least my understanding of what a television movie is. Then, of course, there are the lovely little throwbacks to the video store era. You know, I love this, especially because I grew up knowing video stores and Blockbuster and you know, mom and pop stores that rented out VHS and later DVDs. And so one of the main plot points here is the characters meet at the central location, which is this DVD rental store. And one of the narrative cruxes of the film is the renting out of the film Strangers on a Train. And there are some great moments of the characters picking out the DVD boxes off the shelves, and they are so neatly aligned, and you see other films lined up, and it's really nice. And I love I think there's a quick shot, there's Alfred Hitchcock section, and then you can see a quick shot of a Brian De Palma film. I think it's Obsession. There's another nod, which is, you can see a poster of The Card Player, which is, of course, the Dario Argento film, The Card Player. You can see a poster of that hanging in the window of the video store. So that's a nice little nod. That reminds me a lot of what Alfred Hitchcock used to do, of course, which was to appear in a quick cameo in many of his films, and it became a fun thing to try to catch Hitchcock's cameo. Well, I would say that the poster seems to be, in effect, to be almost like an Argento cameo here. So that seems to me to be another way in which this film can connect with Alfred Hitchcock and the legacy of Alfred Hitchcock. It's really lovely. And just to see the video store, the DVD store culture here in this film, it dates the film, of course, because I think that sort of culture doesn't exist anymore, at least at the time of this video. And so, you know, that's a shame. That's a part of my own film-loving past that I think is slowly but surely becoming extinct, if it hasn't become extinct already. So it's nice to see that sort of thing depicted here. And also there are some real genuine twists and surprises here, I would say, in terms of the plot. When I first saw this film, I was actually quite surprised how the plot seems to go one way and then go back, and then go back to the one way that I thought, and then kind of go back again. And characters that you know, it's actually quite complicated in terms of who is related to what, and what the plan is, etc. So I like that complexity, because I feel like, on the one hand, all that complexity, you know, in terms of the women, and in terms of the video store clerk and all that, it feels to me, on the one hand, to be so important to the narrative plot, but then on the other hand, it seems to me to be secondary to the more important thing, which is the suspenseful aspect of this thriller. So it almost seems to me to be like its own red herring, or MacGuffin, if you will. And it's just a matter of enjoying the film and the ride that Argento is putting you on. So for me, Do You Like Hitchcock has a lot of those elements. And it reminds me, of course, also of Brian De Palma it feels, of course, like a Hitchcock film, in particular Rear Window, but it also has that element of a Brian De Palma slickness to it. And I mean that very positively, and I love it. I really do love it, that, and admire that. And there is, therefore, it feels like Body Double. I don't know if you know the film Body Double by Brian De Palma, but it has that slickness and nice sheen to it, which makes it very, very likable. And I also, the main character here, which is played by Elio Germano, he is very likable. I think he's kind of vulnerable. He's a little bit weak. He's, of course, attracted to beautiful, sexy women, and he's a student. So he's not the most perfect character in the world, but I don't think he's dislikable either. I think he's one that we can follow, and there is a certain level to his voyeurism that I think is partially explained in an early bit of the film, but I don't think that psychological baggage really matters in the end, although it adds some narrative depth, or potential narrative depth, or character depth to his overall arc. But I think overall his performance really makes his character likable. And thus, I think it makes us, it's easier for us to follow this film, and thus to sympathize with his plight, and to be along for the ride, and feel suspense when he is in danger. And there are some moments here of genuine suspense, and not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And so I like that very much. And this is a giallo that's done right. I like this giallo by Argento because it's at once a giallo which is a familiar scene. It's familiar territory for Argento and us Argento fans, but at the same time, it is something that is I feel it's fresh. And it's quite nice to see a fresh giallo from Argento, and it's really paradoxical if you think about it, because he's trying to create something fresh by on paper anyway. Recalling Hitchcock, which is something that he's been doing ever since The Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Cat O' Nine Tails, very early in his career. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's nice to see Argento expressly acknowledging the master of suspense like he's doing in this way. And there are some fun elements, therefore, for film fans who are looking for little Easter eggs and references to films. And there's references not just to Hitchcock, but to Fritz Lang and to others. So it's really fun. It's a fun film. And in the end, I think that's what's important when one watches an Argento film. You just want to have fun. You want to enjoy yourself. And I think, for me anyway, this film does it. Okay, so let me end there, and please, if you have any thoughts or comments about this film, please let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great films. Okay, so I'll see you very soon, but in the meantime, my friends, cheers.